Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us. I am Jason.
And I am John, and Jason and I are thoroughly enjoying doing daily podcasts now. You remember when we started the podcast and somebody, back in 2018, and somebody had said, "Are you guys planning to do a podcast 2 times a week?" And we're like, no, we're not planning to do that. And so Jason and I, within a 7-day time period here, will be doing 4 podcasts. So we'll be doing a month's worth of podcasts in a week because of the NCHC quarantine safety pod structure here. So this has been a challenge. It's a lot of logistics going into it, but it's kind of fun to do. It's a slightly different format for us as opposed to the 3-topic structure, kind of more drawn out thing. It's like, boom, we're analyzing the game, we're moving on to the next game, and yeah.
I think it's definitely interesting. Hopefully the listeners enjoy the different format. It's interesting. We usually get bogged down sometimes in our podcast on, ticket sales and clear bag policies and concessions and crazy things like that. So to have to be hyper focused on the game is certainly something different.
Yes, I'm sure that there are people who are very thankful that we have to have a very narrow focus for this and can't jump down a rabbit hole. I like those kind of interesting discussions, rants that we get on, but we're hyper focused, we're super focused, whatever other modifier I want to use on focused. That's what we're doing here.
And today's focus is the Miami-Ohio game.
Yep, which just completed a few moments ago.
Yeah, and a very tight game. I was quite a bit worried for most of the game. We talked in the last podcast, if you haven't listened, that Omaha in the past has had the tendency to play down to their competition, and they find it easy to get up against Denver and North Dakota and those teams, but they just kind of falter and find challenges with teams like Miami, Ohio, who are in a pretty stable rebuild at this point in time, trying to make that progression to being back to a competitive team. It was 0-0 at the end of the first, so there really wasn't much of anything to talk about except what happens in the last 5 minutes of the first.
Well, it was one of those games that honestly it kind of reminded me of the 4 games we played against them last season, where you look at the strides we made in the 2019-20 season. And like I had alluded to on the last podcast, we did not do well against that team. You look at a season, you look at a kind of struggling, rebuilding Miami, and you think, you play 4 games against them in a season that, you can get 2-3 wins minimum out of that series. And we didn't do that last season. And the most disappointing outing last season was our last one at the end of February, where we went to Miami and we got swept by a Miami team that had only won one other game in the second half of that season against Colorado College, which is, not a top tier team at all. So that is kind of the conundrum. And I was worried after the first period that might happen again. I definitely thought we looked better than Miami, but it's one of those games where you let a team like that stay close, it can cause problems. But yes, you were talking about the last 5 minutes of the first period in this game.
Well, I think that's probably one of the biggest storylines of the game. Conley exiting the zone, chooses to make contact with a Miami-O player. They call him for, I believe the initial call was roughing. They review it, and they determine that there was head contact worthy of a 5-minute and a game misconduct. I'll start it and give you my opinion. I think that was a load of you-know-what. I mean, the 2-minute penalty, I agree with the 2-minute penalty. Like, you should have avoided you were behind the player. They didn't see you coming. You should have avoided contact. made every effort to avoid contact. I can get how you say that, but the Miami, Ohio player and the North Dakota announcers were clearly not agreeing with me on this, but
No, and Jason, let me clarify. These were not the North Dakota announcers. This was Ben Holden and Dave Starman. So they were not the two. Apparently, so they've talked about this, and I'm interjecting here, but North Dakota has their own broadcast crew for this weekend because they're on Midco Sports all the time, and every other team gets a different broadcast crew than North Dakota, which I think is very, very interesting. So no, Starman and Holden, yeah, they are independent. They're independent contractors here as far as this goes. But yes, they did not agree with you, Jason.
Well, I don't know that I would argue that they're independent. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think they spent the entire first period talking about Miami, Ohio, and the only time that they mentioned Omaha was as a way to lead into talking about Miami, Ohio. And I'm like, come on. But in any case, they don't agree with
Jason
me.
Jason is a very bitter hockey fan here.
I'm not a bitter hockey fan. If you're going to claim to be neutral, be neutral, not farce it like that. So, okay, in any case, back to the point.
Yes.
As I see it from my vantage point, the Miami player had his head down. He was reaching. He was not head up. So his momentum and Conley's momentum, I think, were kind of both in the same direction. They make contact. When you're reaching like that and leading like that, you're leading with your head. So, of course, there's going to be head contact because the offensive player has to have some responsibility not to leave his head out there where, it can be glanced by. And I feel bad that he got hurt, and I understand he didn't come back and, concussion protocol and stuff like that. But it just, to me, it wasn't worthy of a 5 in a game. I would have argued that it was even worthy of a 5. I don't think that Conley, I didn't see anything that looked like he raised his elbow and tried to make contact. His arm was pinned to his side where he carries his stick. So
it looked to me like
expect the guy to do?
It looked to me like his shoulder kind of nudged the guy's head a bit. Am I correct on that? Because that's what I thought. It kind of looked like they were a little bit on kind of a collision course, and his shoulder kind of hit the front of the helmet a bit.
But the hard part in that is, when you're going to make contact or something, you have to, in order to protect yourself as a player, you need to turn and square to the check. Because if you get a glancing blow, if you don't square yourself, there's a good chance that you're going to get hurt. And so how much of that is Conley trying to make contact, or how much of it is just him trying to make sure that he doesn't get hurt in a collision with a guy who wasn't looking?
Yeah, potentially trying for like a clean check there. You know what I'm saying? And that's the question. We talked about this a lot last season. As it regarded the emphasis on contact to the head was, how do you determine intent in situations like that? You know what I'm saying? Because it seems like they've had a penchant for calling any little contact to the head. It's like, boom, you're automatically out of the game.
And again, consistency, I think, is key. And last year, that was my big argument was, if these things are going to be called game misconducts, then they always have to be called game misconducts. And that was not the case, because the exact same thing happens to Omaha, and, all they get is a 2-minute penalty, and they start coming up with crazy explanations as to, X, Y, and Z is the reason why it's different, and it's really not that different. You just don't want to make that call against that team. And that's the part that it feels like from a fan standpoint. I argue the same thing with friends of mine that have a Denver podcast, and I said the same thing happened to Denver a number of times. I said the only time it goes in Denver's favor is when they play Omaha. So it's not just Omaha that feels this way, and even in this game it wasn't consistent, because earlier in the first period, Miami, Ohio player takes a penalty for cross-checking. I believe it was Abate. Abate was turned, head towards the boards, numbers showing the player. He cross-checks him. It's not flagrant. Like, it wasn't a bad hit. He clearly kind of let up, but The rule should be that if you check from behind or cross check someone into the boards, I don't care if you could have done it worse or not. You did it, therefore it should have been reviewed, and I don't see how that's any different than what they did to Conley. But ultimately, the decision by the referees was that it was worthy of sending Conley to the locker room, and we were without him. And up until that point, I thought he was our best forward.
Well, and in addition to Jason not agreeing with the call, Jason's daughter Lexi didn't agree with the call and felt a need to text Bridget. But we know I've watched your daughter play youth hockey. We all know what a goon she is on the ice, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
all 22 pounds of her.
All 22 pounds of your daughter. Yeah, we've talked about this, and we've talked about the fact that one of the appealing things about hockey is the physical nature of the game, and the emphasis on player safety in recent seasons has, inevitably it's created a change in the game, and it means that the game, as time progresses, is going to become a much more finesse game. And I don't know if I like that. I don't know if that's something that I want to see. I like the hard-hitting nature. As somebody who grew up a football fan here in Nebraska, I want to see those hard checks. I want to see a physical game, and that game seems to be disappearing, where there's less contact between players, less checking. It is more of a finesse game, and as teams are concerned about losing some of their best players, to game disqualifications because of these penalties. So it brings up a lot of questions, and again, I don't know what the answer is. Jason has his feelings on the topic, as we are well aware, because we've discussed this before.
Because it's not the first time he's brought it up. I know
it didn't feel particularly flagrant to me, and that's my question on the whole thing. And I think you have to be able to judge intent.
My question for the referees, if we were ever given a chance to, and I don't expect that we would ever get this chance, but given the chance to ask them, my question would be simply this: What could Conley have done, or what should Conley have done to avoid that situation? Because I look at it going, I'm not so sure there's anything that Conley could have done to avoid contact. And I find it very difficult to see how he could have avoided making contact with the head because of the way the offense of player was stretched out. Like, he didn't headhunt him. He didn't go after him. He didn't go out of his way to make contact. It was just two guys that ran into each other. One of them wasn't looking up.
Well, it's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with athletes on skates. It's inertia. It's objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and that's what that looked like to me. It just looked like one of those kind of random sort of unfortunate, kind of collision there. It didn't seem particularly egregious. I guess you could see on the film something that would suggest that maybe he, moved his shoulder a bit. But again, it's hard to tell. When you're watching something in slow motion, when you're watching that same thing at fast speed, it may look completely different. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I will give props to the refs to this, in that, this game happens quickly. And they need to be comfortable making the call. And I like the setup that they have, where on the ice in real time, they looked at that and said it was bad enough for at least 2 minutes.
Right.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Like, I agree that they saw something there that was worthy of at least 2 minutes, and that's okay. It seems like they go into the video review booth looking for a reason to give out more consequence than they maybe initially saw. Because to me, like, if you're going to go all the way from 2 minutes to 5 and 10 in a game, why didn't you see it as a 5-minute pound? Like, I think that they should call it if they call it a 2 minute, then it's 2 minutes. And if they call it 5, then you can go and look and decide whether or not that 5 deserves the game misconduct in addition to it or not. But to go all the way from, live, that was just a 2-minute penalty to, oh yeah, nope, the kid's gone, is like, that's a stretch to me. To me, that you do that because you went into the box looking for it. That's how I see it.
They are so gun shy about getting judged negatively for not making a call that protects player safety and sends a message that, as you said, it's possible that they just automatically default to that position.
Yeah.
Anytime the head, has any sort of contact at all.
Except last year. Keep in mind, I'm sure that most of the Mavs fans remember this. We lost Seville for, a number of games because a player comes across when he goes down to make a save and sticks his elbow out and takes his head off with his elbow. Yeah, and it wasn't even 2 minutes. They didn't even call him for goaltender interference. It was nothing.
Yeah, we had a few instances like that with Seville where they seemed to go after his head, go after the helmet. So
right.
So yeah, there's definitely games being played out there. So always frustrating, Jason. And I knew early on in the game that was going to bother you. And I think we were probably both bothered, as we said, that it was 0-0 after one, because you look at a team like Miami. Obviously, UNO has more talent than Miami, but you let a team like that hang around too long in a game, it can spell trouble.
So Miami goes on a 5-minute power play, unlimited scoring 5-minute power play, with I think they had about 4 minutes left, if I remember right.
Yeah,
in the period.
3-4 minutes when they came back from intermission.
Right, when they came into the second period. And I think that's where Omaha really shined. I don't know that they had more than a couple shots.
I think they had one shot on power plays during the second period. Yeah. So UNO did a good job shutting down the Miami power play.
And UNO gets a couple opportunities on the power play. They weren't able to score on them, unfortunately, but
about the midway through the second period, Chase Primo gets the first goal of the game, puts UNO up 1-0.
And that one was on the power play, and that was one of those power plays that kind of looked a little bit at least at the beginning, kind of a little bit disjointed, yeah. And then they get in there and they just make some good plays, and Chase gets in the right spot and a good seeing eye shot from the point, and tip goes in.
Brandon Scanlon puts that thing on net from the First National Bank logo out by the Blue Line Club. It reminded me of former Mav great Greg Zanin as he fired that thing in. And then it looked like Primo got the tip on that goal, and that was a great goal to put UNO up. That's the thing we talk about all the time, is just put a shot on net and good things will happen.
And then the third period comes, and unfortunately, Miami ties it up in the third. It was a good goal. They got the puck to the net, something that they struggled with doing, most of the game, and they're rewarded with a net front player finding a puck loose and sliding it past Seville.
Yeah, and at that point you're worried because that's about midway through the third period. At that point, and suddenly, you've got a tie game, and it really shortens the game for a team like Miami. They don't have the talent, they don't have the speed, they don't have the scorers that UNO has, but it's a tie game at that point. All it takes is some, bobble, some funky bounce, some, junk goal down by the crease that they can put in, and they can win that game. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, don't let it happen. After that great 10-2 win against Western Michigan the other night, don't blow a game against a team you really should be able to beat.
Yeah, and I thought we had it late in the third. I'm trying to remember who it was that Weiss got it was a bit of a broken play in the neutral zone, and we were able to get it up, and Weiss came just darting in
Oh yeah, and
and he
he
gets
slid the
it
puck across the right in front of the
behind
crease.
he reaches behind the defense, slides the puck across the goal mouth, and I can't remember who was on the other side and just missed the net on it. I mean, it was just a bang bang play, and I thought right there, I thought we had the game won.
I can't remember who that player was. I for some reason I'm thinking it was either Randall or Glenn, but I'm not sure. I can't remember
I
who that was, but
I was thinking it was Glenn, so we'll go with
I
that.
think it was
And we'll
Glenn.
see if we're
Yeah, you
right.
know, and I'll tell you, we haven't talked about him much, but he's actually, for one of the kind of quieter players the incoming recruits, he's actually played well the first three games of this pod format. So that would have been a great goal there. He put the puck where it needed to be. It didn't quite go in. We end regulation, tied 1-1, and it's UNO's first overtime game with the new playoff format, which there was some debate on Twitter about the conference points and the playoffs. So Jason and I talked about it before the podcast because we had not talked about this yet. Instead, we spent our 80-minute plus podcast talking about something else apparently, but the new rules this year, rather than after the 60 minutes of regulation, if a game's tied, it going to a 5-on-5 overtime for 5 minutes, now it goes to a 3-on-3 overtime for 5 minutes. And then as far as the NCAA concerns, whatever happens in that overtime period is the final outcome of the game. Tie for UNO, win for UNO, loss for UNO. It doesn't matter. After that 3-on-3, the official NCAA record books, that's what happens. In conference
No, it's
play,
a tie because it's 3-on-3. NCAA is a tie, no matter what.
it's not a win if you win.
Nope. Because it's 3-on-3 and not 5-on-5 for NCAA purposes, it's still a tie.
See, I'm seeing that as a 1 because we've got UNO is 2-1-0 in the record books right now.
Yeah, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, at least what they published from the NCAA this summer was that they weren't counting any overtimes, regardless of how the leagues format their overtime.
Okay, well, in the shootout though, it would be considered a tie. If after the 3-on-3 it goes to the shootout period, which is a conference only thing for the NCHC, whoever wins that shootout, it doesn't matter. That's just for the extra conference point. So
Right.
here's the way. I have the rules here. Would you like me to? I will read them. Okay. Per NCAA rule changes that occurred during the summer, 5-on-5 overtime will no longer be played in the regular season. All NCHC and NCAA games beginning this 2020-21 season will go directly to 3-on-3 overtime if a game is tied after regulation. One 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime period will be played. If a team scores, they are considered the winning team, while the other team is the losing team. All statistics and goals scored in 3-on-3 overtime will now count both for individual statistics and the final score, unlike past seasons. If a non-conference game remains tied following the 3-on-3 overtime, it would simply end and be considered a tie per NCAA rules. If a conference game is still tied following the 3-on-3 overtime, the game will go to a 3-person shootout to determine the extra point in the standings. In past season, the NCHC has used a 1-person sudden death victory shootout, but now we'll switch to a 3-person shootout with one less overtime being played. So the 3-on-3 period structurally is still the same as the 5-on-5 overtime period, but the NCHC has changed. So as you will recall, last season, the NCHC had a 5-on-5 overtime period, and then they went to a 4-on-4 overtime period to determine the extra conference point. And then if it was still tied after that, the NCHC then had that shootout. But now the NCHC, after that 3-on-3 overtime period, is just going with a shootout to determine the extra conference point. But in this instance, because UNO got the goal in the 3-on-3 overtime, which was a great goal by Martin Sundberg, who we've been talking about a lot, it counts as a win in the NCAA record books. So it's kind of, from conference play perspective, it's kind of a truncated overtime. You don't have the extra skating period, and then you just have that 3-on-3 and then the shootout. And conference points are a little bit different, though. After that 3-on-3 overtime period, um, a win will be worth 3 points, while a loss in regulation is worth 0 points, as is the case with regulations. But if a game remains tied after regulation, 1 point will be awarded to each team. And this is just for conference race purposes only. One additional point will then be given to the team that wins the 3-on-3 overtime or the 3-person shootout. So as we said, UNO got 2 points out of this because the game went to overtime. But in the NCAA record books and in the NCAA standings, this counts as a win for UNO. So UNO would officially be 2-1 after this game.
I know it doesn't matter this season, but it will be interesting to see how that would affect the pairwise rankings, because RPI has always factored in. Well, it has never. I mean, it's always factored in ties. It's never factored in 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 or shootout wins and things like that. And that's the reason why the NCAA was always like, if you want to do something to figure out your conference stuff, go right on ahead and do it. For NCAA purposes, because of the pairwise, we're essentially counting anything that ends after 60 minutes as a tie.
Yeah, I don't know what they do as far as the power ratings and things like that. I'm just saying, I mean, and I don't know if they'll weight anything differently because it's a 3-on-3 overtime or not. I think the reason the NCAA did that was to address some of the conferences, having these kind of, for want of a better term, just kind of, they were all over the place with their, awarding the extra conference point after the overtime period structure. And I think the reason that they went to the 3-on-3 overtime period was to create the likelihood that somebody would score in that overtime period and that the game wouldn't end in a tie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, this one only took, 15 seconds?
Well, and last night in the North Dakota game, you and I watched Jordan Kawaguchi scored. Their hot offensive players scored in the overtime period too. So we've had 2 OT period games in a row where we've gotten to test this thing out. So, yeah, it does. It as we've talked about before, 4-on-4 and 3-on-3 definitely opens up the ice, and creates a lot more opportunities. So Joey Abati took it into the zone, had a great pass to Martin Sundberg, and it was a great goal for him. It was good for UNO because, again, as we said before, when the ice is open like that, you never know what's going to happen.
I mean, if you want to be competing against the likes of Duluth and North Dakota at the end of the season and, challenging for tops in the leagues, this was a game you had to get 3 points out of. But, for where UNO is and where they've come the last few seasons, 2-point victory is very good for them. It keeps them in the top half of the league currently inside the pod. It puts them in striking distance of, what would be home ice advantage in an NCHC playoff round.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, UNO's 4th place in the NCHC. It was kind of funny. They showed the NCHC grid the other night, and Colorado College, who just arrived in Omaha because of the COVID concerns with that team, they actually would have made home ice under that structure with no games played at all because they were right in the middle. So yep, we're right out there. And you look at it, we got 3 points so far. We're right behind St. Cloud, who we play tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tomorrow night, tomorrow afternoon.
Sunday.
I'm not sure.
Night.
I'm not.
It's the 8 o'clock.
Is it the night game? Yeah. I wasn't quite sure what time we were playing. So, yeah, that'll be a great matchup.
St. Cloud, 8 o'clock Sunday night.
Yep, absolutely. So it's going to be exciting to see. It's going to be exciting to see what transpires in that game against St. Cloud. And regardless, it was a good win for UNO. This was at times it was not the flashiest game to watch, for sure. You'd much rather watch UNO roll up 10 goals on an NCHC foe, but not all games are going to be like that. So I was happy to see UNO come out with the win. 2-1 so far. That's a great start for them in this pod. against some good teams, good competition, and we get St. Cloud, a team that we haven't had a lot of success the past several seasons in the NCHC.
And we get to go sit on the visitors bench again.
So far I like sitting on the visitors bench wearing the black jerseys, Jason.
I do like the black jerseys. So we should talk players of the game. Do you want to start? Or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you go first. I think I've gone first the last two times, so I'll let you make a pick.
I had a number of people on my list. I was trying to narrow it down, and I gave up and decided that rather than pick a player, I'm going to give the quote unquote player of the game nods to the penalty killers. The job that they did on the 5 minute killing off the major for Conley, I think they ended up killing off 6 total power plays for Miami. And I mean, they were always on the puck. They had good space in the lanes. Their sticks were active. They did a much better job, I think, this game and the last game about getting pucks out when they got them and not kind of holding on for that one last look or, just blindly throwing it. They were really good about once they got the puck, heads up, find the outlet, get the puck out, and just go from there. And on a penalty kill, that's really what you're looking for, is just to burn time. So rather than pick any one of them, I'm going to just say the whole group of them were the best players on the ice for the Mavs.
They did a good job blocking shots tonight for sure. They've done that through the last two games, and I believe it was Dave Starman who pointed out in the broadcast how good UNO's stick work was in the game. So you're absolutely right. They did a great job minimizing shot opportunities for Miami tonight, and I think that is a nice pick, an unconventional pick, but I like that pick. I'm going to go with a traditional player, and it would be very easy to go with one of the two goal scorers, Chase Primo or Martin Sundberg, two players who've had success through the first 3 games of this NCHC pod. But I'm going to go with the defenseman, Brandon Scanlon, who had an assist on both of those goals. One of the exciting young defensemen on this team. I've liked the player over the course of this season and last season, and I'm going to go with him on the game. That rocket, as I mentioned, from the First National Bank logo out there by the Blue Line Club, helped put UNO up 1-0 early. It was an important goal in this low-scoring affair. So, got to go with Scanny on this. So,
he was definitely one that was up there on my list. If you were going to force me to pick one, because you wouldn't let me get away with the whole picking the entire penalty kill unit, which is like half the team. Abate was the other one that was going to be on my list, and I know he gets the goal in the overtime winner. Not just because of that. Like, I thought he did an excellent job in the circles. He did a really good job of getting release off the faceoffs.
Yep.
And that's one thing with centers that really makes a big difference between a good center and a great center. Great centers find a way to, even when they lose the draw, to have an advantage. And he was doing a great job of getting off the line and stuff, getting in there when he had those opportunities. And I thought he did a great job of creating chances and stuff for UNO throughout the game.
Yeah, Joey Abate is a guy who plays with his heart on his sleeve, and he did that tonight. And you can tell that out there. You could see that effort. We saw it last season, and it's great to see him getting off to a good start this season. And I completely agree with everything you just said. Exciting player to watch.
Yeah. So we're back at it tomorrow night, 8 p.m. St. Cloud. We'll do another podcast after the game and throw that up there, and you'll have a break, so you'll have some more time to go back and catch up on episodes after that. UNO does not play on Monday, and the pod does not play on Monday, so there's nothing to watch until Tuesday after that. So,
well, it's going to be exciting to take on Coach Brett Larson and the Huskies tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that game. It should be an exciting one. St. Cloud perennially is a tough team, even in seasons when they're down. And I don't know what your pick is for that game. I don't know what our results are picking so far. I don't know. I just keep picking that UNO is going to win 3-1. So I'm probably going to stick with that since it's since we're undefeated that way. So I'm going to say UNO is going to defeat the Huskies 3-1. It's always tough when you're dealing with a veteran goaltender like David Rennick for St. Cloud. It's like a Hunter Shepherd. It seems like he's been in net for 12 and a half years for St. Cloud, but he's a tough goaltender. And it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, St. Cloud doesn't have some of the big names, big scorers that they had before, but they can put up the shots and put up the points.
Yeah, they had a really good first game. They've got Denver tonight in the night game, so they've got the shorter turnaround than UNO. And I think that they have a bigger test to them tonight with Denver, especially Denver's position of having lost close games so far. I don't know how they're going to do tonight, which is part of why I'm hesitant to make a pick, but I'm going to go out and say that UNO wins 4-2, just mostly off the case of St. Cloud being a little bit more tired and UNO seemingly right now using their speed very well to create opportunities. I think that'll kind of further exasperate any issues that St. Cloud may have at this point in time. So we're both picking wins.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the size and the speed of UNO so far this season has been very, very impressive. So they are developing and evolving under Coach Gabinet, Coach Noel Bernier, and Coach Gerard into a really well-oiled machine that looks like they've got a lot of good, solid depth. So,
Yeah.
So we will see what happens. We will see what happens in the game. I'm excited to see it.
Should be a good game.
Should be a good game. Looking forward to watching some hockey right after this podcast, and I know a lot of the listeners out there are looking forward to that as well. So, until next time, which will not be that long, be sure to follow Mavpuck on Facebook, Twitter. You can listen to back episodes of this podcast at mavpuck.com, and we obviously appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate you sharing the podcast.
Yes.
Love it when you like and give us good ratings on the podcast. It motivates us to keep going. So until next time, go Mavs.
Go Mavs.